Hey there, John Morris here, johnmorrisonline.com. Welcome back to another episode of The John Morris Show. So some of you may have noticed that I did not post an episode last Thursday and Friday, and my excuse is that I was sick as a dog. I'm just now, today, kind of getting back to where I'm feeling a little bit normal. I think it's about Wednesday night last week I started feeling it. Anyway, so I didn't post any episodes Thursday and Friday last week, but I did still manage to write my daily emails for those 2 days, which, by the way, is one of the advantages of being on my email newsletters. I do tend to, no matter what's going on, get those out. But anyway, last Thursday, I had sent an email, and I want to kind of talk about that email today because I really wanted to do a video on that, but I just was too sick to do it. So anyway, the subject line for that was web design, or the web design lesson I learned the hard way. And this was one of those moments for me that has kind of always stuck for me. This actually happened quite a decent number of years ago, and it's still one of those things that I remember quite clearly. So I'll tell you how much of a lesson it was. Anyway, it was up to that point in my career, was my biggest client to date. So it was a big deal. And this was a guy who really could make or break you with a single tweet because he was really popular, but he was also really well respected. Matter of fact, I saw him, there was a pretty decent sized company that had done some stuff in relation to him and his business. I was kind of messed up, and I saw him go toe to toe a little bit with this company. I mean, he's a really nice guy, so it wasn't any sort of snarky back and forth, but there was a conflict, and I saw him go toe to toe with this company and basically win and get them to change what they were doing. So he has a lot of pull. He has a big following. His opinion is respected, and I was helping build a membership site for him. So needless to say, I was bending over backwards to make him super impressed. A, because there are doors that could open as a result of that with any client, that's true, but also B, somewhat of a hedge of I didn't want him going on Twitter and blasting me and all that sort of thing. So again, I was bending over backwards to make sure he was super impressed, and things were good until launch day. Now, and a bunch of members were, things were going good. A bunch of members were signing up to the site. Nothing had broke, but they suddenly started getting slammed in their support desk with complaints about the site not being mobile responsive. And you can imagine where everybody's eyes turned. And that was pretty embarrassing and nerve-wracking because A, I was just embarrassed by the whole thing, but B, I was sure that this guy was going to blast me on Twitter, and that was going to be the end of my web design career. That was going to close a bunch of doors because a lot of people, actually a lot of subsequent clients I got after that were a result of the work I had done for him. Had he blasted me on Twitter, those clients never would have happened. So it was really nerve-wracking and embarrassing. Now, in my defense, this was, like I said, this was a number of years ago. This was still when responsive web design was semi-new. It was kind of that gray area where it was like, if a client really pushed for it and asked for it, if they mentioned that was something that they really needed, then you did it, but it wasn't necessarily something that you were just automatically doing with every site. It was still kind of that gray area. And again, it was a while back. So I wasn't a complete tool bag for not just automatically making it responsive like you would do today, but I learned very quickly, and kind of the point of this is that I learned that point it had become expected because we had never talked about it once. They had never brought it up, never emphasized it. They had just expected it, and they were shocked when I didn't do it. Now, thankfully, I didn't get blasted on Twitter by the guy, and I quickly fixed the site and everything was good. But I learned a hard lesson that day about the importance of knowing responsive design. So, if you don't know, mobile responsive websites are mandatory these days. And your clients, your bosses, anybody you work with will simply expect it And this is kind of the key point that I want to make, because I know some of this you probably already know, but the key thing is they likely won't even mention it. And if you don't do it, they'll be shocked. And that was kind of the thing that was the eye opener for me, and something I've noticed here as of late. For a while there, the site being mobile responsive was like the top of the list of what a client wanted. Now, it seems like the clients that I work with, it's not even mentioned. It's not even brought up. It's just expected. And I still see a lot of websites out there being built that aren't mobile responsive. I still see a lot of developers out there who are trying to learn this stuff and maybe haven't prioritized it quite as high as they should. And that's really what I'm trying to get you to do, is if you haven't learned responsive design yet, if you haven't prioritized it high at the list of things I need to learn, you really need to do that. Just because it's easy to think, just because clients aren't saying, hey, I need this to be mobile responsive, it's not all over the articles and so forth like it used to be, that, oh, maybe it's not as big of a deal. It absolutely is. What's happened is it's become just expected. Like, if you don't do it, it's a big old shock. And so, again, if you don't know, that's the case, and really need to prioritize it a little bit higher up the list than maybe some of you are. Now, yes, things like Bootstrap help, and all the different frameworks and so forth, and absolutely have used those and will continue to use those and so forth. But even then, if you've ever worked with any of those frameworks, you know that in any design, the client's going to want, I need you to tweak this that way, or I want it to look this way, etc. And the framework isn't going to do exactly what you need it to do. And so you're going to have to go in there and actually use your responsive design skills in order to polish it off and to make it what you need it to be. So until you master responsive design from A to Z, you're always going to be a little bit insecure about it and kind of leave yourself open to running into a problem that you don't know how to fix. The other part of it is when you know all of the base skills and you know responsive design itself inside and out, using those frameworks becomes a lot easier. It makes a lot more sense, and you can really start to do some cool things and kind of bend them to your will, because you understand kind of the foundation underneath of them and what they're trying to do, and the approach that you're taking and how you might tweak it for different situations and so forth. So point is, if you haven't yet, it's time to learn responsive design. Again, I think a lot of developers put it lower on their learning list, and it really should be a lot higher. Again, if you haven't learned it yet, it's time to get it handled. Plus, it's just one of those required things that has to be on that list in order to be a web developer. It's another checkbox on that need to learn list. So anyway, if you haven't got it handled yet, get it handled. One option that you can do that is my Responsive Web Design 101 course at johnmorrisonline.com/responsive. I just kind of opened this back up. It had been kind of hermetically sealed for a little bit, and it was kind of hard to get to and so forth. But I just kind of got some things in order and opened that back up. And I'm going to teach you everything that you need to know from responsive design, from the 3 different kinds of responsive design layouts that you can build, that you know, a lot of people know the fluid grid, but that's just one of kind of 3 different layouts that you can build. So I'm going to teach you those 3. I'm going to teach you a lot of the basic skills, you know, like responsive images. There's really about one single line of code that you can write, of CSS code you can write, to make all of your images basically responsive. It's something that should pretty much be in every you know, sort of responsive CSS code that you write. It should be in there. It's not 100% for every situation, but probably 99.9% of situations, and it's a one line of code. So I'm going to show you that. You know, I'm going to have practical exercises where I'm going to show you how to actually walk through building all of these different layouts and using all of these different skills. I'm going to show you responsive typesetting, which I think is something that people don't talk about near enough, and it's actually one of the most crucial parts of responsive design. So we're going to get into all of that stuff and actually teach you responsive design, not how to use Bootstrap. That's good, but this is the kind of the foundational skills. So, and it's going to help you build mobile responsive websites and be able to do it from scratch to really be able to build your own framework if you wanted to. So, again, johnmorrisonline.com/responsive. You never know, might save you some embarrassment, and you can avoid a situation like I got myself into. All right, that'll do it for this episode. Again, thanks for watching. If you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe, and we'll talk to you next time.